Coming up on this episode, I'm thinking about how we get stuck in life. Like in many situations, whether it be in work, in relationships, in the gym, whatever, like there's so many instances in which we get stuck. And there's a few ways we can get out of it, but it's easy to lose sight of how. So I think about that and think about situations in my own life where I've been stuck and how I've got out of them. Like I say, it's definitely interesting to take the time to think about it, so let's go break it down. What's going on, beautiful people? This is the Perspective Chasers podcast, and I'm your host, John. On this episode, I'm thinking about being stuck in life. As always, I'll take my own life as the kind of proverbial guinea pig in this situation, but it's an interesting thing to think about, and like anything, it unfolds onto life in many aspects, and it's easy to lose sight of that when you're kind of in amongst it. And if it was any other situation, we'd probably treat it fairly differently. So, for example, like when I was a personal trainer, if I hit a plateau in weightlifting, in where I wanted to go in sense of numbers or whatever else, I wouldn't be frazzled or whatever else. I would know what to do. Like if we was doing like bench press, for example, and I hit a plateau or whatever, straight away I know if I was to change to dumbbell for a while and do dumbbell press instead of bench press, in probably not much time, that plateau would break. And it's not because the movement's drastically different, but it's because there's certain elements that bring out different aspects of your body and make them grow in a different way. And the same can be said for life. So now, like, if we're stuck in a sense of work, or if we're stuck in the sense of friendships, relationships, or hobbies, or whatever kind of aspects you want to look on life, if we're stuck in a kind of rut or stuck in a situation we don't want to be in, it probably doesn't need a drastic overhaul. It probably needs a slightly different approach than you normally take. And there's probably going to have to be like that for a while before changes start to take effect. But it's harder to see because it's a different situation. And normally, if it is career or friendships, relationships or family or whatever else, there's a lot more emotions in it and it can be a lot more complicated than pursuing a number. But when you boil it down, it doesn't have to be. Like the approaches, like I just laid out, can be very similar. Like, I don't know, say you want a pay rise and the way you keep going around it or whatever else isn't working. So instead of going to your boss for a pay rise, look for another job and see if they will offer a pay rise. And then bring that to your boss and see how eager they are to offer you a pay rise. Same thing, but just a little bit of a different approach. But it's allowed you to get out of that rut. You don't have to change the whole situation. You don't have to say that you want to leave that job or quit a job that you like. But you have to go around something that you want to pursue, which is more money, in a bit of a different way. And again, you can flip that onto life time and time again. And unfortunately, it's not always going to be the case that you're going to get to keep that job and get the pay rise. Sometimes the answer to the solution is going to be leave the job and get the better pay elsewhere. And that's something else that you're going to have to come to terms with. Like, sometimes, if you used to relate it back to the personal training metaphors and that, like, sometimes you've hit your max on something. Like, unfortunately, sometimes you get to a point where you can't push anymore for one reason or another, whether it be your power to weight ratio or your natural limit or whatever it is. Like, maybe even an injury. Sometimes something completely out of left field can stop you kind of going all the way, kind of to where you'd want to go, but you don't know that until you go down that path. And if you figure that out, say you was pursuing a like personal best bench of like 150, and you plateaued at 120 and you've done all the changes, and then you got managed to creep your way up to 130, creep your way up even further to 140, and you've been stuck at 140 for years. You've done every change you can and this, that, and everything else. Maybe that's your natural limit. Like, sometimes we've reached our natural limit in life. Sometimes we've reached our natural limit in a career. Sometimes it takes getting out or into a new situation to figure out that we've got more room to grow. Okay, cool. Maybe your bench press limit is 140, but then what about your individual dumbbell press? What about an incline press? What about a decline press? What about a different type of movement? Like, there's so many aspects that you can roll this into in life, but you have to kind of ask yourself those questions. You have to do the work, as with anything. Like, find out, is it a case of, okay, I need to get through a different approach to get myself unstuck? Or is it a case of you're spinning your wheels in the mud and you're just digging yourself a deeper hole? And in that case, it's better to get out the truck and hoof it. You'll get a lot further on foot than you would digging your hole in mud. So take the time to ask yourself those questions with life. Like I say, I've got stuck and I still get stuck in life so many ways. But it is nice to think about what gets me stuck and how I can get myself unstuck without spinning the wheels so much, without digging all the deep holes and kicking mud everywhere. Like, the quicker you realize you're stuck, the less mess you're going to cause getting out of it. And the same is with life. The sooner you realize that you're in a plateau, or you're stuck, or you're in a rut, or whatever else, the sooner you can put in the work to get out of it. It's not to say they're not going to come again, but the better you are at realizing them, the better you are at catching them and knowing how to get out of them yourself, the better it's going to be for you. Like, this is all a kind of game in learning about ourselves, and at the end of the day, like, and we change over time, so it's constantly going to be a different learning game. But put in the work. Like, life is fascinating and there is loads of possibilities, but if you don't explore them, you'll feel stuck. You'll feel like there's not much to life. But the reality is, there is a big world out there. It's not all rosy, but it's not all bleak either. Like, there's so much to explore, so much to see. I say it all the time, but it really is true. There is so much to the world that even if you are stuck and it ends up being that it's a dead end, there's another career, there's another this, there's another that. Like, the world's a big place. There's plenty more fish in the sea, there's plenty more land to conquer, there's plenty more whatevers. Like, there really isn't, at least to me, there really isn't much scarcity in the world. Not unless you believe it. And again, it depends on what you're asking for. Like, if you're asking for something that is rare to begin with, then yeah, of course it's going to be scarce if everybody wants it. But not everything is scarce, and not everyone needs everything. So, I don't know, I kind of think of, like, it's almost like someone living in, like, the middle of Alaska putting out a petition because they don't have an air conditioning unit and everything else. Like, well, you don't really need one. You live somewhere cold. And my ignorance might get me in trouble there because they might have their hot spells, this, that, and everything else. But you see where I'm going with it. Like, sometimes we don't all need the same thing. Sometimes the same experience ain't going to make us all happy. The same thing ain't going to make us all happy. The same solution ain't going to get us out of the same ruts. So the more you kind of take the time to think about life, take the time to reflect on your life and other people's lives around you, the more you'll realize how you get stuck, how people get stuck, and how you and others get unstuck. And the more attention you pay to it, the better you'll get it. And then you'll be able to help yourself and help others. But again, it's still going to happen. It's just one of those things, I guess. I suppose it's almost like getting hungry. Like, no matter how much you eat in one sitting, you'll always get hungry again. But again, over time you learn to eat better food and eat things that are going to last longer and fuel you better and this, that, and everything else. Same as with life. You learn techniques that are going to fuel your life better and help you go through life better and manage your life and manage other people's lives better. I, I think we have lost that kind of tribal sense where we share information and genuine information anyway. Like people are more than willing to share the superficial stuff, but genuine information on how they're feeling, how they got through this and that, and how they progressed through this and that. Like either they don't want to share it or people don't want to know it. Because normally it's not glamorous or it's not interesting. It's a long, tedious road. But that's the reality of it. And because people are, I guess, convinced that we live in a time of quick sell, that that's what they put out. And it's always in that kind of idea of people ain't got time to waste and they want that quick payoff. But the quick payoff ain't always the best thing. Like look how many people study for years to get qualifications in amazing fields of research or life-saving like educations and things like that. Like, there's so many possibilities out there and so many kind of I lost my train of thought, damn it. There's so many ways in which you can choose to live life. That getting stuck should be impossible, but it happens. And it happens to the best of us. But the more time you take to reflect on it, the more time it's gonna, or the easier it's gonna get to get yourself out of it over time. I know I've said that already, but I'm trying to get myself back on that train of thought. But I guess it's gone. Again, like sometimes I get stuck with what I'm going to talk to. Words gone. Compose yourself. Sometimes I get stuck on what I'm going to talk about for an episode, and it happens. But eventually something comes through. But what I guess it's another one of those lessons where it doesn't have to be the episode that makes or breaks me. It just has to be another episode. It just has to be a continuation. Just like getting out of a rut or getting out of a stuck situation or a plateau. It doesn't have to be the solution, but it has to be work towards it. The more you kind of stay consistent, even if to get it somewhat back on track, even if you was to go back to the PT metaphor and go back to bench, and you didn't want to change to dumbbell, you wanted to stick with bench, in time you'd probably break through that plateau anyway. Maybe in smaller increments, or there's other techniques or whatever else. But that consistency is what will get you through. If you just go, oh, I've hit my plateau, I give up, you'll never get through it. So that lesson with being stuck, if you stuck with this episode that long, is that consistency. No matter how stuck you get, if you're consistent in trying to get out of it, and again, it's going to have aspects of being calm and not spinning your wheels too much. But when you keep working at something, eventually you'll get out of it. To dial it all the way back to a metaphor I dropped way back when, it's like building a mountain, piece of paper at a time. It's slow, but if you're consistent with it, you'll get there. That's like getting out of anything. Just be consistent with it, put in the work. It's not always going to be the pretty things to get you out either. Sometimes it's going to be the dirty work that you need to do. The things that we've been avoiding and everything else. That's another massive element of being stuck. Sometimes we're just stuck because we're procrastinating on a lot of things because what we need to do isn't what we want to do. But what we want to do is what we need to do. So, or what we need to do. I lost it again. But well, it's been a long day. It's been a hot day. But as always, we get it done. I think I'm going to wrap the episode up there because I'm starting to sweat now and I want to open the windows and let some air in, but the background noise, meh. Anyway, If you've stuck along this far, thank you. Please drop a like, a subscribe would really be appreciated. It's going to help this grow and hopefully make this be more consistent and grow into something greater along the way. But the seed for this episode is going to be take some time to see where you're stuck in life and see where you're stuck in that rut of taking the same approach over and over again. And by doing the same thing but slightly different, or maybe giving up and taking a whole new approach, see where that could add value to your life. Again, you're going to have to take the time to find out where you are in the situation. Is it worth putting in the time to correct it, trying a few new approaches to push through the plateau? Or if it's worth calling it a day and trying something else. Inevitably, it's going to be your decision, it's your life. But take the time to think about it. Because if you don't, it might be made for you. And then you never know what you're going to feel about the results. So take the initiative, take life into your hands, think about your life, and put in the work. It's your life at the end of the day. All the best. I'll catch you in the next one.